Amanda Razani with Digital CxO, and I'm excited to be here today with Francesco Iorio. He is the co-founder and the CEO of Augmenta. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you here. So tell me a little bit about yourself and the company.
Absolutely. So, Francesco Iorio, my background is in computer science, more particularly in high-performance computing. Essentially, throughout all my career, I've been working with very large computer systems, solving problems that are very challenging generally for computers to do, and even more challenging for humans actually to solve. And the company, Augmenta, actually is a reflection of some of that journey, if you will. Right? So where we are using computers to help the construction industry change some very traditional avenues to design buildings that lead to a lot of waste both in construction materials and in energy use, right? So, and improving on the traditional design process by adding a hefty dose of artificial intelligence that really helps people, make more efficient buildings, to waste less resources, less energy, and overall actually increase the productivity of an industry that has been kind of lagging the general productivity gains that other industries have enjoyed actually over the last few decades.
Wonderful. So let's dive into that a little bit more. I know you said that y'all used generative design, machine learning, mathematical optimization, and rule-based systems to create this new AI solution. So how did you come up with that? Can you walk me through that? And did you have any challenges along the way?
Oh, absolutely. So this methodology, if you will, that we created to solve this problem stems from the fact that the output, so what we produce are engineering design drawings, if you will, right? So, and they have to be by law compliant to rules and regulations that are determined by specific governments, right? Specific governmental agencies. So, unlike other generative systems that exist today that people can use and enjoy, like ChatGPT or Stable Diffusion, that create beautiful pictures or kind of enjoyable kind of text or chats. We have to essentially create something that goes under a lot more scrutiny, if you will. If a few pixels on a picture of a dragon in a fantasy settings could be wrong, right? So, and people won't generally complain. If the designs that we create are wrong, actually, there could be serious implications in terms of regulatory compliance, right? So we had to overcome a challenge in modern generative AI systems that is so-called the hallucination challenge, right? So these systems sometimes tend to very confidently report wrong answers to the statements or to the questions that are actually posed, right? So what we did is we matched let's say, traditional rule-based design optimization system that is very kind of mathematically rigorous and correct, if you will, that can mathematically prove that the solution is correct, right? So with the, let's say, speed and creativity of modern machine learning techniques that, again, can be seen in these other systems that are available to customers to use. So we came to this conclusion really by matching our essentially deep background and expertise in both disciplines, right? So we had some seminal research work actually in our careers inside not just the leadership team, but throughout our organization, both in the deep learning essentially section of computer science, right? So, but also again in the large scale mathematical modeling and optimization that has been more traditionally, let's say, the focus of design optimization work.
Great. So, can you share some use cases for some companies using this? And then, do you know kind of what the cost and time savings is using this?
So the system is still in beta. So we are literally getting the product actually into the hands of customers effectively as we speak, right? So, but we see some preliminary results that are extremely encouraging. Right? So, again, some of the challenges I mentioned earlier in the industry are, the waste. Again, up to 30%, people don't realize, but up to 30% of construction materials that are used in construction industry actually go to landfill instead of in the buildings themselves, right? So that's a non-insignificant issue, right? So And our goal and our preliminary kind of studies actually indicate that we're going to be able to save a lot of the waste, essentially, or to reduce actually the waste actually by a considerable amount, 20 to 30%, right? So which is really considerable, considering that this reduction actually comes from having more certainty about the building materials that are required for a project to exist and to be successful, right? So the level of detail at which our system designs buildings, if you will, or portions of buildings, right, is such that, again, it gives a lot more confidence to people to purchase and to procure and to deliver on the construction site only the materials that are actually necessary, if you will, right? So while, we're not going to claim that we're going to reduce all landfill, that would be impossible, at least in the short term, but we definitely help in actually making that reduction. And so, but more so, there is a second kind of strategy, or if you will, a second benefit of using our systems, in that the designs that are produced by our artificial intelligence usually, on average, they use fewer parts, up to, let's say, 10% less actual objects, right, parts, to compose essentially a system that performs the same function well, right? So that has savings, of course, of the cost, right? So of the systems that are installed, but of course, as a byproduct of having fewer parts, also the embodied carbon is reduced, right? So just as a byproduct of using fewer resources, right? So, but critically, what our main prerogative actually is for the future is to also design systems that are very efficient, so that use less energy, right? So than what is required today, right? So, and while we're starting with electrical systems where efficiency has only, let's say, modest gains overall, right? So, but in the future, essentially, we are going to create modules for our platform that also design mechanical systems such as air handling, heating and cooling and ventilation systems, which are some of the systems that actually consume the most amount of energy in buildings, right? So where the energy expenditure is the highest. And so having efficiency gains in those, cumulatively speaking, if all buildings actually were to be designed with our AI, actually the savings actually will be really substantial in the future.
So definitely more green and better for the environment moving forward.
Absolutely. That's really kind of where we started, essentially, as one of the main prerogatives of our efforts, is really to actually create something that makes a considerable impact to the industry, both from an economics perspective and from a sustainability perspective. Like, luckily, again, adopting this type of technology, it doesn't have to be a compromise between the two, right? So it's not always true that in order to make a system more sustainable, it needs to be more expensive, right? So, and we're proving that.
And going back, you did mention code compliance. How do you make sure to be in compliance? And do you have any quality measures that you use?
So compliance actually is very strict. So there is a very binary, analysis, if you will. Actually, a system is either compliant or it is not, right? So we, let's say, translated the rules and regulations that exist into building code that are books that are like specific to each country and even to each municipality, actually, sometimes, right? So, and we translated those rules and regulations into, let's say, systematic mathematical rules that we can enforce at design stage and then check for compliance actually at the output. And so, critically, we design our AI in such a way that we don't have to check the compliance after the design has been created, but rather the rules and regulations are part of the input to the AI, and so the designs are created such that they are compliant by design, if that makes sense.
Wonderful. So I want to look at the industry as a whole and ask you, how do you feel generative AI is changing the roles and responsibilities of engineers and other professionals in the industry?
That's an extremely good question, actually. We think that the injection of AI into these workflows changes the relationship between essentially the stakeholders actually in construction projects, actually, and it will do so more actually into the future, mostly by essentially bringing the relationships actually closer together. Right. So right now we see a transition and a shift actually in the industry from more, let's say, kind of segregated players, right? So in, for example, design bid build projects, right? So where let's say the architecture and engineering team acts first, and then after the bidding stages, essentially the contractors come in and actually design the building for construction and provide the the necessary supply chain, and then go forward actually into the built, right? So into the built environment, right? So, but progressively, we see the industry shifting into integrated project delivery, right, or design build types of projects where all these actors essentially have a much closer relationship between each other, right? So, and so we see artificial intelligence actually bringing them together much closer, because of the speed at which optionalities can be evaluated or questions can be answered, right? So something that normally takes weeks to answer for a question coming from a client in terms of space utilization or sizing of the engineering material, right? So generally takes an engineering team and or a contractor several days or weeks or months sometimes to come up with a design that can answer the specific questions. And so generally speaking, this is not possible to do in iterations or essentially using the so-called optioneering, right? So essentially evaluating multiple options for each possible design choice, right? So, but the introduction of AI actually suddenly makes that possibility a reality. And therefore, the dialogue between all the stakeholders actually will be much more dynamic in the sense of decision-making, right? So having the ability to very quickly examine and essentially create options and viable options actually at that. And so that it really sheds additional light on the risks and the compromises that they could be making by making specific choices, right? So this is something that has never existed really in the industry as an option or as an opportunity, right? So, but that suddenly its emergence actually will make again these people actually in the workflow actually play and work actually much more closely together. So
more options, better decision making, faster, more efficient.
That's right, lower risk, right? So lower risk and lower the cost, right? So increase the overall productivity, really. And while again having the impact on the environment not be a secondary an afterthought, right? So, but it's really by design.
Absolutely. So thinking also about, some people have ethical concerns surrounding generative AI. Can you talk a little bit to those concerns, and how do we address those moving forward?
That's also an excellent question. So there are differences in the ethics concerning actually generative AI. One of them is something that we hear of different applications of AI, where AI can replace actually sometimes kind of human skills and human creativity, right? So in our case, actually, the reality is slightly different in that design is a huge bottleneck today, right, in the industry, right? So, and there really just aren't enough trained and skilled industry professionals who can take up the amount of work and the amount of challenges that the industry actually necessitates. So what we're seeing our system is the future deployments actually not in circumstances where organizations are trying to downsize, but in fact actually is where organizations are currently bottlenecked by the inability to scale because of the costs, but also because of the lack of skilled trained actually personnel, which is really difficult to have. Again, the industry actually suffers greatly actually from lack of trained industry and skilled professionals. So we really, our name actually has that concept like very much built in the sense that our aim is really to extend the abilities of humans rather than supplant them, if that makes sense, right? So AI in this case actually plays, we think, actually a very critical role in just essentially really supplementing the creativity and the decision-making power, if you will, that people already bring to the table, right? So, but also having the ability to create this vast landscape of options, it's also a learning tool that essentially people can use to really better their own understanding of the compromises that are going to make in each project that they actually undertake, right? So it's definitely not a replacement, but rather actually it's a supplement. That makes sense.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. Well, Francesco, do you have anything else to share with us today?
No, I think that, again, this is, we believe is one of the very few circumstances that happen to an industry like construction, right? So where there's a chance for a transformation that is similar to, the moving from the drafting table to a computer, really, right? So we see the advent of artificial intelligence as really that milestone that will unlock essentially, tremendous opportunities for the industry, right? So that really has suffered and kind of lagged behind actually several others like microelectronics or several others that have benefited from the injection of very sophisticated technology in their development.
Most definitely. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your insights. Look forward to hearing from you again soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.